all. Thank you very much. Recording in progress. So lovely to see you all here. We've just got a few people still arriving, which is great. Thank you for your promptness. And on a Sunday morning as well, I don't know about you, but it makes it extra difficult. And I'm extra impressed that you're all here on time. So just wanted to arrive. You know the drill. Make sure you've changed your name. Make sure you've got a comfy seat. Make sure you've got some snacks or that coffee or that cuppa. And to help you through the course of the morning. So as just one to arrive, I think we're all good to go. So a warm welcome. And what lovely music that was. I quite enjoyed reflecting on that. So we'll put that in the chat, I think, where that music was from to get you into the mood. Right. So if you do have any technical problems, again, you know what to do. Contact the support team. No questions, a creative question, no questions, a bad question. If you've got any problems, we can sort out those tech issues for you. And again, let's have a little wave from Ewan. We have Ewan with us today, who is available in the quiet room. The very lovely Ewan. Are you there waving at us? I feel you may well be. There you go. Lovely to see you, Ewan. Thanks for joining us. And again, as we talked about yesterday, if you are feeling a little bit overwhelmed or you need to take a pause, take a step back. These are big issues we're talking about. If you're at all overwhelmed or want to chat with Ewan, just get in touch with the support team or let your facilitator know. And you can just pop into that quiet room and touch base with Ewan there. So thanks very much, Ewan. There's also a number of others joining us over the course of the day. Again, as you've met before, we've got a range of observers. We've got some researchers with us today. And of course, our support team, all of them will have labels on their names, so you can be really clear that those are part of the team in the background. And you'll see them over the course of the day. And of course, we have you, the very fabulous members, now already. So today is a really special day for the Assembly. It's the second and final day of weekend 8. I know you've worked really hard, especially yesterday. You've worked hard over 7 weekends, to be fair, but yesterday we could feel your brains really turning hard and dealing, especially trying to get an overview of all of those goals, that big fat document. It's the thickest document in my house, that is. And we know you worked really hard on all of that. Listening to those powerful messages from the Children's Parliament as well. Wow. They really made an impression, and look out Parliament, because they're on their way and starting the process of prioritising the themes for your statement of response that you want to be making. And that's what you're going to be building on over the course of today. And just a reminder of how we want to work together, about listening to each other, about caring for each other and caring for ourselves as we have these really difficult conversations and difficult things to listen to, and we try and rationalise, and we've got all that debate still to come over the course of the day. Please, another reminder, don't share details of the conversations or identifiable details on social media, but do tell us, do tell people that you're here and you're involved in this process. But again, just not sharing those details until those are published properly as a whole. So Ruth, I believe it would be lovely to hear from you if you want to say good morning. One of our conveners, I don't even know if Josh is here as well, is he?
Well, good morning. It is good to be here again today, and thanks, Chris. Just let me add my welcome, and Josh, we'll share a few words here. This is the final day of weekend 8, but we know it's not the end of the process to make Scotland a place where climate justice, climate emergency is treated in a fair and effective way. You have the chance today, though, to finalise your responses to the government, to sharpen, to refine, to clarify what you wanted to say. And I guess for me, just to say, enjoy the process. Enjoy the day. Josh.
Yeah, hi everybody, good morning. Just to echo what Ruth said, really, it's a really exciting day for the Assembly to be able to ask questions to the Minister and to start to finalise that response to the government. So enjoy the day, and I look forward to sitting in on some of the sessions and observing. So thank you.
Lovely, thank you. And Josh, that looks like a very comfortable chair you've got there. That's making me feel warm and comfy already. Yep. So well done there. Okay, thanks very much. I'm just going to share my screen now. I'm hoping the right thing comes up. And I'm just going to take you through some slides about the day, just so you've got a little bit more detail there. Can you see that? Scottish Assembly. That's just to make sure you know you're in the right place. If you're not expecting to be at a climate assembly, you better dial off. Okay, let's get going. There we go. Just a reminder, in case you've forgotten, how should Scotland change to tackle the climate emergency in an effective and fair way? As we've said, you've put your recommendations to the government on this already. The government have made a response to that. And then today is all about shaping your panel response to that. And again, how we're tackling the climate emergency in a fair and effective way is really the focus of this. We've got a warm welcome, which I hope you've had. So here's an electronic hug. We've got a group check-in in just a minute, and you're going to be continuing to prepare the overall statement from the Assembly on the government's response. First of all, we're going to be doing the Minister's question panel, so that is really exciting. The team have been working in the background, preparing those questions and getting all of that sorted. So that I'm really excited to be hearing. Then we're going to have a little cheeky coffee break. And then we're going to be getting into the nitty-gritty of drafting your statement of response. That's when some real work gets tough and you start working really even harder than you have. Then we're going to take some lunch, and then back at 2 o'clock, you've got further work on preparing and refining the statement. Again, that's a lot of debate, a lot of dialogue, and it's going to be lots of work for you preparing to feed back to the Assembly after the break. So you get a short break in the middle of the afternoon. We're going to do a little bit of a recap of member support, and we're going to look about how you can stay in touch and what we potentially could do together, and what you could be doing in terms of the what next for you as an Assembly or as a group of people. And then also, finally, that powerful moment where you get to present back to each other what your groups have been working on and your elements of the statement of response to each other, because each of your groups are working on different elements of that. And that's going to be the moment where each group prepares that back and shares it together. So we're then going to be ending at around 4 o'clock, I reckon. So that's the day. I hope you're ready. If you're not, we're going for it anyway. So over to you, Kayla.
Okay, so I need to unmute.
We can hear you.
I am unmuted. Okay, I'm so used to having to unmute myself and remember to unmute myself. Look, again, as Chris said, really pleased to see you all here this morning. We do have a lot of work to do, but actually, don't worry about it. The whole weekend is basically building a conversation that builds on itself from where we started yesterday morning, thinking about the big objectives, the big goals, the things we're looking at, what bits of the government's response we were pleased with, what bits of the government's response we maybe were a bit disappointed or thought they could have done something more. But it's building through the entire weekend. We're not launching into anything new right now. We're not launching into anything different. So your conversations that you've been having are going to feed into exactly what we're doing today. So in a minute, we're going to pop you into the breakout rooms. And as we said yesterday afternoon, we took all the questions that people had prioritised, and not surprisingly, lots of people, when they were thinking about what do we want to ask the ministers, had come up with quite similar things. So we've combined some of them. So each group has either pretty much their first or their second priority question, but also has some information there about some of the other questions that other members asked, other groups asked, so that you might want to think about, can we incorporate an element of that into our question without creating an essay, without creating, a question that actually is 5 questions. We need to try and focus it in so we get the best out of the hour we have with the ministers who are with us. When you go into the groups, you'll also have, I know you're working on some prioritising themes and some issues that needed to be part of our response to government. And again, overnight, we've looked across all of the different groups. And again, there were some that came up a number of times. And there were some that actually, were more specific around individual groups, but still fitted with the broad pattern of where we were going as an assembly as a whole. So we've allocated them down to the groups to work on throughout the morning and then into the afternoon. So when you get into your groups now, your facilitators will be able to share with you which sort of things you're going to be focusing on and which questions you've got for the ministers, and hopefully identify someone from your group who's actually going to ask the question. So over to the breakout rooms now.
Great. Some of the groups are coming back now. Yes, welcome back from your breakout groups there and doing that preparation work. It's lovely to have you back, and Kayla's going to be hosting our next session when you've had a minute to have a look at who's doing the questions. And I suppose this is when we get to hear from members of the Assembly. And are we all back from our groups? We're looking forward to
the
back questions. That's great. So shall I hand over to you, Kayla? You're going to be question master today with our lovely ministers who I think you're going to introduce.
Yeah, hopefully enjoyed hearing from ministers. You may have been more or less content with some of the answers to your questions, but I think they gave us a lot of information, a lot of perspective, and a lot of insight into how government is starting to use your report and considering your report moving forward. And I hope you found that valuable. We're now going to spend the rest of the morning really getting down to the work of starting to draft up the statement of response. Now, we started yesterday morning with your own initial kind of reflections and responses to what the government had come back to the Assembly with. We then had a bit of input from, some of the evidence leads and evidence group that have been working with us throughout the process to sort of help focus in on maybe where things were being delivered that you'd asked for, or where maybe there were some gaps, or things hadn't gone quite as far as you would have liked. We had opportunity to meet again with some of the members of the Children's Parliament group that have been working alongside, and I think that helped a lot of you kind of focus in on some things that were important, and that whole idea of sort of the importance of thinking about the future generations as well, and just some of their enthusiasm. Gets us back here as to why we're here, why we are trying to all work together to make a difference. In the afternoon, you also started to prioritize down what are the things we really want to say back to government, what are the types of topics we want to report back to them on behalf of the Assembly about, to have, as we said just there with the ministers, this sort of building up a two-way dialogue where we've as members, as representatives of the public who've spent a lot of time considering this, came up with some really strong things that you thought, this is how Scotland needs to change. These are the types of things that need to be happening. Government has given us their response. And, I know for some of you, you don't think it's gone, maybe hasn't gone far enough, or there's specific things that you felt were really important that they've kind of missed an opportunity to launch onto. but, you know, and maybe the timescales, they're not moving as quick as you want, but they, you know, they've given us our response, their response. This is the opportunity to be creating the response back to them. So yesterday afternoon in your groups, you identified some priority areas, things that were important to be covered in the response back to government. And overnight, we've looked at all of these across each of the groups and tried to sort of group them in together so that each group will have sort of 1 or 2 areas to focus on now to start drafting up a statement that collectively, when we bring them all together, will cover the range of things that you were prioritizing. So before we go into groups and start doing that work, I just want to share with you the kind of range of things that are being covered by different groups, in case when you get into your group, you're going, well, hang on, this was important. Where is that being covered? And you will in the afternoon have a chance to actually, you know, review some of the other groups too, look in at what they've got, add additional ideas. And just to let you know that the ideas where you were putting what's the heart of what we really want to say, why is this important, that you were working on yesterday afternoon, this is being shared with all of the groups. So if a group's been allocated something that your group prioritized, trust me that they've also been given your reasons, your thinking, your ideas behind it as well. So I'll just run really quickly through the range of things that are being covered by the different groups. So first up, there was something around sort of work and volunteering and goal 12 and things that needed to sort of be pushed in that direction. So that's going to be looked at. Government accountability, and it came up in a lot of the groups, but group 1 has actually got this one to focus on, about how will the climate, like what's the role for this climate assembly moving forward, and what do we want to ask from government in terms of them creating a forum for this group to keep giving that oversight. Government funding, and really around the idea of sort of, you know, how are some of these things going to be funded in a fair and effective way. There was another thing around sort of the goal that we had around education and that wider awareness. And I think that was touched on by the ministers there as well, that sort of that need for sort of wider awareness and wider public acceptability of the fact that we need that change is needed, and some of the changes that you've been proposing. There was a focus on sort of land use and that sustainable land use. There was some good progress reported in the response from government, but there are also some things that were still being questioned around how do we make the best use of our land and sea environment in terms of reducing carbon emissions, but also sustainable food production. Circular economy, and that was touched on there as well, about very much that sort of, you know, reuse and how do we deal with resources. Then there was another big focus on some communities, and that idea, I think, of the sort of 20-minute communities and local, and how do we enable communities to actually take more initiative and power there. We had another theme around sort of retrofitting homes, and again, it was one of the key questions that we asked there to the ministers about how can we actually deliver on that, and in the sort of timescales that will make the difference needed. Yeah, there was a theme across a number of groups about really needing clearer targets, wanting government to move faster, set some targets that can be measured. So that was something that we wanted to touch on in a response. Again, accountability, and it links in there about how is government going to not only measure success in terms of making the transition towards tackling the climate emergency, but also demonstrate that and demonstrate that to the public. Travel, again, something we touched on. We wanted to take some sort of response around that as well. Another aspect of resources and how we're using our resources and reuse. A broader theme about sort of picking up a general sense of, you know, what do we feel about the Scottish Government's response to the Assembly recommendations? And just to say, these are in no real order. They've been sort of distributed across the groups so that all of the groups have either their sort of first and or second priorities there to be considering. And when we pull it together later in the afternoon, we'll put it in a bit more of a logical order so that it, you know, starts to read like a real statement of response from us. There was a real push raised across a number of groups for sort of joined up approaches, not just Scottish Government, and a lot of things that were raised in the Scottish Government response that they have said, look, this is not within our power. It's like, well, make the links, join up, get things happening. Fairness, again, fairness was a big theme right through the Assembly. We want to pick that up in terms of ensuring that any change towards sort of net zero does keep that fairness in place. Links again there, how Scottish Government's using the existing powers they had, and that's saying that you were questioning and asking the ministers there about and what else could be done to enable some of the changes that maybe aren't within their remit right now. Ambition, you know, there was some questioning around, you know, the level of ambition Scottish Government was showing. Did it meet up to the ambition of the Assembly? Public transport, again, fits in with some of the travel emissions, but there are different aspects of that. And Patrick definitely was talking there about, you know, that investing in active transport, active travel and public transport. Carbon labelling, something that was really well supported by the members and maybe hasn't been picked up quite the way that you had hoped. And that's them. That is the range. So you can see that across all the different groups, in our response back to government, we picked up some very specific things, in terms of the goals, the recommendations that you know, either are really pleased about some of the moves that are being made, but there might be something else that we want to push a little bit further or push back as, you know, we'd really like to see this happening. And we've also picked up those broad cross-cutting themes about, you know, while the Assembly may be coming to an end, the agenda for driving this change still needs to continue. So I'm going to stop talking there, pop you back in your groups.
Could I ask a question, please?
Yeah.
I think this would be helpful if each group had an idea of how many words are going to be here, because also rabbit on or go too short, you know. Okay,
the facilitators do have a bit of a briefing on that, so they'll be able to fill it in with your groups. For each of the statement, each of these sort of sections of statements, we're thinking maybe, you know, 4 or 5 lines, 3 or 4 lines. That's the type of sort of thing. Maybe, you know, 1 long sentence, 2 short sentences, a very short paragraph. Really try to focus in on making a clear statement of what the intent there is and what you want to convey to government. So I'll hand you over to your groups now, and they've got a bit more detail about sort of, you know, how we can pull these statements together.